pandemonium. Use my fangs to murder ya. Yo soy la diosa, los demonios no me controlan. Soy culebra.
All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome to Nightmare on Sedgwick Avenue. I'm your host, Octoberz, and today we have another episode. It's season 5, episode 8 already. So we have a really dope guest. I've been wanting to have him on the show for a while. I met him, if I'm not mistaken, and he can correct me when I bring him on. I think it was at Thought Fest. I think I initially saw him perform. He was, I think, performing for a spot, and he ended up winning the spot for that year. I think it was, either 2020 or 2019, 2021 maybe. I can't recall. But I really love his performance, his live performance. He's really dope, really talented rapper, artist who reps the IE. So Thought Fest, if you guys are familiar with that, is an underground indie hip-hop festival. Shout out to 60 East, who organizes it and every year. But yeah, he's one of the artists that's been there. And without further ado, let me bring Cam Archer, is who I'm talking about. Hey, how's it going?
I'm doing all right. How you doing?
Good. Thank you for coming on. I know we have another thing that we have in common besides hip hop is horror, so that's kind of why I wanted to bring you on too, because we have a little bit of both worlds, right? So for those who might not know who you are, you want to talk a little bit about what you do, how you got into the hip hop scene and all that?
Sure. I'm Cam Archer. I'm from the Inland Empire, San Bernardino, California. I've been making music, like actual good music, for like 10 years now. Started making music when I was really young. And yeah, I do music. I write music, write everything pretty much. I do as much writing as I can, shows, scripts, whatever. I do voice work. I book shows for people. I do all types of stuff. Just anything to stop working a regular day job is what I get my hands on in the creative outlet facet,
That's pretty dope. And so do you have a 9 to 5, or is it like just your creative thing is like takes over everything?
For now, I still do right now, but we're getting towards the end of it, hopefully here.
Yeah.
So just
hopefully
creative outlets from there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I always want for everybody that's creative, because I'm on that road too, and it's a tough one sometimes, but I know we can all get there. And it's even inspirational too if you're doing both, right? Because you got to do what you got to do to pay your bills, or if you got family or whatever it may be, but you still don't let that deter you from following what you love,
Absolutely not.
Exactly. And I see you, like I said, putting in work, so that's even more inspirational, like hearing that you actually do have a 9 to 5, because I see you and it looks like you work on your craft a lot, like I can tell from your performance, from the videos you post, like your freestyles and all that stuff that you post on social media. So that brings my next question, like for you, being in the era now where everything's like instant gratification and people's time span is not like we used to, where we can hear like a whole album. For you, how do you navigate that? And are you like a fan of like albums, EPs, or are you kind of like had to like transition to singles?
It is tricky in my position because I'm definitely more of an album person as far as the way I create. I don't have a problem with the consumption of singles and things of that nature, but my mindset is very body of work oriented. So I haven't put out a full length album since 2019. Okay. Like April of 2019 was the last album. Everything from there has been like small EPs, bodies of work, but not like an expansive album the way I would prefer to create it. I'm hoping to do that, begin making that this year, and then either at the end of this year or early next year drop the full length album. But yeah, I don't really like to operate in the space of I'm just going to keep making these singular songs until they catch. I like to create something that encompasses an entire piece of art, if you will, something that's as cinematic as possible.
Yeah, I like that. I'm the same way. But I think it's also the era we come from, right? Like we were like the era where we're the last era probably where like albums mattered, like the skits. It was just like you said, it was like a cohesive body of work, and now it's like singles. But I like what you do is you kind of like you're in the middle, right? Like you kind of decided to do EPs, which is still less songs, but it's still a cohesive body of work, And that kind of brings me to my next question, because you dropped a project. Was it last year, the El Guapo 3, right?
Yeah.
And that's really dope too, because I see like the horror aspect to your music too, because like the titles of your songs and some of it's in the music too, in the lyrics. So you want to talk a little bit about that, like what inspires your music and how do you keep like creating different types of music?
Yeah, no, I'm a big entertainment guy as it is. I mean, when I first started writing music, I was writing the video games beats. That was the first thing that like sparked my mind to write. So
Hmm.
whether it's TV, movies, comics helped a lot when I was first like really starting to really like I'm gonna put out music. I would read a lot of comic books, and that would kind of help spark the creative juices. But Guapo 3 came along due to a lot of just I'm kind of a last minute creator too. So
Hmm.
that was a I basically was it was before Scream 5 came out. And I
Okay.
was like, you know, it'd be dope if I did a whole EP that was like kind of inspired by Scream. And it was like 2 weeks before it came out. So and I was like, yo, oh gosh, Leota's my producer. I'm coming over for a few days. We're just gonna knock out some songs. So I did that. I did like 8 records, but I didn't drop it then. I ended up going to New York at one point
Hmm.
to work with some people. And the movie came out, and I was like, it's just not enough time.
Hmm.
And as the year went on and I was waiting for some situations to shake out that didn't, I was like, you know, I'm gonna go revisit these songs, maybe add a couple other songs. And I'm still gonna put out this whole Guapo thing and probably drop it closer to Halloween and go from there. So that's kind of where it ended up going. Just
Okay.
more of I look at that project as I can see exactly what parts of the first Scream movie happened during this song. Because I feel like Scream's soundtrack is the only thing that's like you can knock it for. So
Yeah.
this is like if Scream came out in the current year, hip hop would more than likely be the soundtrack because we're the most dominant genre period right now. So it would probably be the
Exactly.
soundtrack.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make something that kind of followed along with the story.
Yeah. You should try to get a placement or something for the next one. There's gonna be a part 7, so
I
that'd
know,
be
right?
dope.
Yeah. Yeah, they got Mike Shinoda on this one, so they're taking strides, you
Yeah.
know, but maybe.
Because for the longest, it's always been, like rock, but I mean, hip hop has always been
Mm-hmm.
in it too. Like Tales from the Hood, all these
Yeah.
different movies,
Mm-hmm.
Bones. Um, and for you, like for example, the project you put out, El Guapo 3. How do
Mm-hmm.
you, as an artist, determine success? Like, I know some people like don't focus on the numbers, some do. Like, what's for you like success?
I try not to like be too numbers oriented, but I do feel like there's certain benchmarks and standards I need to hit as far as how many people I'm affecting to know that there's some level of relative growth in
Yeah.
order to know that this project was really successful. So if I'm only reaching the same people over and over again, am I really growing? Am I really broadening my horizons? I do this because I love it, but at the same time, if you don't actually expand it, you're just kind of hurting yourself at the end of the day with what you love. So I gotta,
Exactly.
move wisely enough to realize, okay, this is doing better than the previous ones did, or it's not doing better than the previous ones did. How much of that is my fault, the way I'm marketing and operating within my space, or could the music have been better? What could I have done differently? So, I do look at all those things, but I try not to make it too exact number based because numbers are
Hmm.
so easily faked these days.
Yeah, that's true. And do you base it on anything else? Like, like, especially because you perform live.
Mm-hmm.
Do you like, base it also like on the people that come up to you, like saying like, hey, you're dope, or like somebody that you might not even know you reached, like you go
Mm-hmm.
somewhere else to another state or something and they're like, they know who you are. Like, is that another way of success too for you? Or what's for you? Like, what would you define it as for you?
Definitely. I mean, because I've done a lot of shows. So it's always nice when people come up that don't know you and tell you
Uh-huh.
they enjoyed the show. It's always nice when you do go out of state, you perform at a show, and people are like really engaged with what you did, or they already somehow knew you. That's really
Mm-hmm.
dope. But just
Yeah.
random people hitting you up, I had somebody randomly hit me up once because they asked Siri or Alexa to play a song, and instead of playing my song, instead of playing that artist's song, they played my song instead because of the name similarities. And
Uh-huh.
he just left it playing. Like his friends were like, he was with his friends. He's like, no, let that keep playing. And he found me on social media and messaged me, and he's been a fan of my music ever since. Like
That's
that
dope.
type of stuff is like, okay, yeah, he doesn't know me at all. He just heard a song and that made him want to continue listening. So that's always what you want to do.
Yeah, that's pretty dope. And kind of to take it back a little bit, like how did you fall in love with like hip hop?
I fell in love with music in general.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how. My mom doesn't know how. My mom was not a huge music person,
Uh-huh.
but if anything was on the radio when I was really little, like 2, 3 years old, I was trying to like learn the words when I was really little, and my mom still doesn't understand how. But I've always just loved music. I didn't have a great amount of it around me growing up. My godbrothers would
Yeah.
listen to hip hop. I fell into rock really young, just on my own. My
Mm-hmm.
sister would listen to R&B and hip hop, but it's always music has always been a part of me in some form,
Yeah.
hip hop included.
That's cool, and that kind of that's you kind of went into a different direction too. That I kind of remembered Rick Rubin, where he talks about like listening to other genres, right, and like letting
Hmm.
that kind of influence you or like inspire you. Because sometimes if you listen to the same thing, you tend not to, like we talked about growth. So for you, like what other genres do you look at or like get inspired by?
Well, it's the way the best way for me to answer that is the three most important albums for me
Mm-hmm.
when it came to artistry were La Hybrid Theory by Linkin Park, Daft Punk Discovery, and Get Rich or Die Trying by 50 Cent. So those three albums were the
Okay.
reason that I sound the way I sound. But I was listening to everything. I was when I was little, the first albums like I remember wanting were like Californication and Nevermind. Like those are the albums I wanted originally when I was little, and mom's was
Yeah.
not trying to hear that at the crib. Uh, but like the first albums I did buy was like the first time I went to a store was between even just different styles of hip hop. It was between 400 Degrees by Juvenile or some Shady LP. It was always, because I
Yeah.
loved the Hot Boys when I was little. There was always just different facets of that. I just yelled at somebody yesterday for saying stuff about Eiffel 65 because I loved Blue when I was a little kid. Like I had that
Oh
album.
my
Like
God.
I would buy anything that I liked musically. I didn't care what it was. I would buy it.
Yeah.
I would buy anything. I had Britney Spears' first two albums.
Yeah.
Loved Britney. I had like there were some groups in the movie Smart House that dropped albums. Like I'm buying them. I didn't care. Like if I liked it
Yeah.
and used it, I didn't care. I didn't have any type of genre limitations on the music I would listen to this
Yeah.
day. So it's always important because yeah, you can't just you get too tapped into one style of music,
Mm-hmm.
you can't grow.
Exactly. Yeah, that's cool. I'm the same way. Just yesterday we were like on a little road trip. We actually went to the IE to do some
Mm,
interviews up there. And one of my friends was like, "Damn, you have like a real unique playlist," because it was just like all these genres. So it's like it's
hmm
cool to have that. And for you, like keeping it like strictly hip hop, like you mentioned,
hmm
obviously albums that are like all over the genres that impacted you. But what's your like
hmm
top five hip hop albums or top five artists, hip hop artists?
My top five hip hop albums would probably be just off the top of my head: Get Rich or Die Trying, The Blueprint, The Cool, Because the Internet, and what's the fifth one gonna be? It's a good one. What is the fifth one gonna be? I'm gonna go ahead and go with Restless by Exhibit. I'll give that to the fifth spot. That
Okay,
album was pretty important.
that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned like this ones that I hadn't heard in a while because usually I ask this question and people bring up like the regular ones, but it's cool that you brought like the
Yeah.
cool like Lupe Fiasco, like it's pretty dope.
Oh
And I
yeah.
can see
Oh
that
yeah.
in your music too. Like now that you say all these things, I'm like, okay, I can hear the influence. Um,
hmm
and you named a lot of albums and artists that are like really creative and kind of tap into different genres too a little bit like in their music. So
hmm
for you, when if you have any like writer's block or whatever, like what helps you to tap back into your creative side?
For me, it's just more so either finding some form of entertainment that I want to watch or music I want to listen to, or sometimes even just going back because as an artist, we kind of all can get in our own
Mm-hmm.
heads and question what we're creating and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
sometimes just going back, like, no, yeah, you're right, you're good. Go listen to this. You wrote this, and you're like, oh yeah. But for the most part, I just kind of just sit back and I'll just throw on a beat, and if it doesn't catch me pretty quickly, I kind of
Mm-hmm.
just leave it alone. I don't like to overstress it
Okay.
because then it becomes like monotonous. It becomes too much like it's a chore and not I'm not doing something I love at that point. I'm trying to
Yeah.
force myself to write just to write. So if it's not flowing, it's not going to work. I mean, but eventually if I just grab a word, I catch it, I can usually go, but I
Mm-hmm.
definitely end up with writer's block where I don't write for like a couple of weeks and question everything.
Yeah. I know that I was gonna say like, do you come across that? Like, I think as a creative, I don't know if you're the same way, but like for me, like when I'm not creating, sometimes I feel like down on myself. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if you happen to have that, like, how do you navigate that to get out of that kind of mind state?
I just kind of remind myself that I just like I'll go back in my notes and be like, look, you just wrote something like X amount of time ago. Like it's not always going to be like you got to recharge sometimes, and sometimes you get on
Exactly.
a spell where you just write a bunch of stuff in like a really
Mm-hmm.
short span of time, which is honestly how a lot of my current work has happened. It would just be like really quick, just like bursts of I just do 6, 7 songs, 5, 6 songs come out of nowhere, and I just
Yeah.
throw it all out there. But it's not always going to be the way that you feel like it should be because it's creativity. It's whatever's inspiring you at the time. So you just kind of let it happen to you.
Yeah, I like that. And then I just saw too, I'll share right here in a little bit, but I saw that you submitted for the Tiny Desk contest,
Yeah.
which is really dope. What are your thoughts of like, like putting all that together? Because obviously, you have a band and everything. Like, how did that come about?
I wanted to have a band before I was a rapper. So I've always
Yeah.
wanted to have a band. So I fortunately for me, my main producer, Ogosh Leo, this is a drummer. And one of my other main producer, Nabi, does play keys. I have another keyboard player named D Major. He just couldn't make it to that event.
Okay.
And one of my closest collaborators, Dare House, who usually I get for like hooks and whatnot. He's one of the most talented musicians I know, period, writing, etc. He's an amazing bass player as well. He's a full-time musician. So we've been doing live stuff now. I want to say we did our first like live thing in like 2016, around there.
Okay.
We did our first like live show where I call the band the Midnight Society, just a play off of Are You Afraid of the Dark, which was one of my favorite shows as a kid, obviously.
Cool.
So just it was always a process of since they do this contest every year, I would always say that I would submit, and then I would always just like forget or get in my own head about it and just not get the submission in. But shout out to Christine Aria, who sings on this song. She was like on my head about submitting. So we just said, I was like, all right, forget it. Let's get everything together. Let's get this submission done. And my videographer, Ada Von Johnson, Antonio, he came through. We shot it and tried to make it look as clean as possible. And, there we are.
Yeah, it looks dope. Yeah. Good luck. Hopefully you get in there. That'd be dope to represent for the IE. And my next question, let's kind of change a little bit like the topic, and we'll move into like the horror side of it. How did you fall in love with like the horror genre?
I wasn't like it was not a plan. It's just very ironic. My mom's, when I was little, I was not trying to watch any like horror movies or nothing. Like I remember my god brothers, they were crazy. So like, but they got like I remember going over there one day. You walk into a room and there'll be like a corner like of a wall, like a full size wall, and then it's the rest of the room. I remember I was like 4 years old and I walked in their room and they had gotten this giant poster of Freddy Krueger on the wall. I remember I booked it out of the house and my mom didn't know what the hell was wrong with me. But like probably when I was about like 5 years old, I have a cousin who's the exact same age as me. We were born the exact same day. And we were like really close. And they brought us into the house and they sat us down and they said, "Oh, you guys gonna watch this movie? It's a comedy." And it was Jason Goes to Hell. And I was like,
oh my God.
And they, fortunately, it was at least daylight, and they made us watch that movie. My mom was like, my son's not gonna be a punk, blah blah blah. But from there, just as I started, like after that, like maybe a year or so later, I saw Child's Play, and then right around that same time, Scream came out on video, and I was at my dad's house, and they rented Scream, and I watched Scream, and it was like the slow like progression of seeing more horror movies to the point where I fell into that point where I was like 12, 13, and I would just watch whatever. Like AMC would have all the marathons of all the Halloweens. I'm watching it. Spike TV would have all the Friday the 13th. I'm watching it. Like WGN showing all the Nightmare on it. I'm watching it. Like just got into it heavy like that. But it's ironic because my mom is actually a punk and she can't watch anything scary. Like she can't watch she can't watch a trailer. If she sees a trailer, she'll have nightmares for weeks.
Oh, wow.
It's really funny. So she created a monster and that's not my fault. I didn't want this life. That's your fault. But.
That's funny. Yeah, I feel like my parents too. Like both my parents we would rent them. Back in the day when you still rented movies, the VHS and everything. Like both my parents would watch a little bit of everything, but like horror was one of the predominant ones. And it's kind of ironic now because same thing. They created me as a monster too, and then now they're both like scaredy cats. Like they can't watch them. Like I think the last time we all went together as a family, I think I took them to see Resident Evil, the newer one, the Raccoon City one. And it was hilarious because like that night my dad had like nightmares. He's like, I couldn't sleep. I was like seeing the zombies or whatever. So I was like, well, you guys got me into this shit. So,
yeah, it's not my fault.
But that's funny that you say that because I can relate to that. And obviously you're wearing Ghostface. You're a huge Scream fan like myself. Like what from all of those movies, like you said, obviously it was one of the movies that you kind of watched when you were younger. what kind of like fed your fascination for that specific movie?
I think it was there's just an aura around that movie that just it has the essence of that time, because I feel like I've had this debate with people around me. Like, I think the best time in like pop culture was like 97 to like 2001 to me.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, but I just like it has that essence of that. It has actors that kind of encompass that. And you had Nev from coming off Party of Five. You have Kevin Williamson wrote it, who wrote Dawson's Creek, like who wrote I Know What You Did Last Summer. So he had that like helped spark the teen genre, and it's just so self-aware. It's a very self-aware movie, and it always captivated me when I was younger. And then of course Wes Craven did it, and I loved Nightmare on Elm Street, and I was like, dang, Wes Craven did this too. And it was just a big gumbo pot of like stuff that Cam likes all coming together to create an amazing film.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, because it's like a time capsule, that movie, like kind of like you mentioned, because like I think it's the first, if I'm not mistaken, it's the first horror movie that used cell phones. And then
it was also like the first one to acknowledge horror movies. Like
exactly, like making it meta.
Like
that's true. And then obviously it switched the formula too with the final girl, like Nev having sex for the first time and actually surviving and having to be a virgin.
It brought back
changed
the psycho
game.
move of killing Drew Barrymore like at the beginning. So now you're like, well, what the hell's gonna happen?
Oh yeah, killing off like one of the main people that we know. Yeah, that shit was crazy. I know some people like criticize it because they're like, oh, it's too funny and makes like it's more of a parody. But I'm like, no, I think like Wes Craven, that's what was the intention. It was like a parody, but also like you said, like talking about it itself, like the horror genre, and making fun of itself, but also like adding to the genre, you know?
Yeah, and it was much darker. They just kept making them edited. It was gonna be NC-17. They kept making them change the edits, and hey. Yeah, could have been a lot worse, people.
Yeah, I know. And now look, it still lives on even past Wes Craven. So that says a lot. Even like I would have never thought. Like I was having this conversation with my sister the other day. Like I would never thought that two Latinas would be like the main protagonist on screen. I'm like, this shit's crazy.
I was like, dang, I don't think. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. What have you seen the new one or not yet? What without spoilers, because in case people haven't watched it, but like, what were your thoughts on it?
I loved it. I'm surprised that I loved it. Like I liked the last one. I was like, okay, this is solid, and I love this one. So I'm excited to see where they go with 7.
Yeah, same here.
I'm excited to see where they go with
it. Yeah. I think I like this one better than the last one. I feel like just because Dewey, you know, I was like, man, but whatever. Because I'm like, he survived every movie, and then the way he got killed was like, come on. Yeah. Like at least they should have done it like something like tougher, because I mean he's been stabbed before, you know. I don't know. Yeah,
the way he went out was kind of like, the phone rings and he gets distracted. Why he have to get point blank? Just, you know, like, come on, man. Now I still got to see Gail running around. Oh,
man. And then talking about like horror and stuff like that, what's your favorite like villain of all time or horror icon of all time?
The cheap answer is for me to say Ghostface, because it's pretty obvious. But if I'm going with more of like the non circulating characters, like I would have to say Michael. When I was really little, it was Jason, but now it's Michael. Even though he's turned into like John Wick in these new movies, I'm gonna go with Michael.
Yeah, no, mine's Jason. I don't know if you see him in the back here. And I don't even know why. I think it was just because it was one of the first horror movies that I watched too, and I just like the way he looks with his hockey mask.
Yep, that played a big part for me. Was the hockey mask when I was a kid.
Yeah, and now like if anything, I'd probably say like maybe like Freddy Krueger, just because he's like he's like one of the few ones that talks and
he's got a whole personality. He's got a whole personality. You know, this is I just told somebody this story. The moment that I stopped like fearing so much the characters from horror movies, even though my imagination, I'll be laying up at night like, what if Michael's outside? Like, wait, what? Like, but when I was about 5 or 6, and I had this dream where I was with Chucky, I was with Michael, I was with Freddy, and we all went golfing. I don't know why, but like I had a dream where we all went golfing, and Michael got mad at Freddy because he kept cheating, and they got into a fight. and Chucky just decided to jump in, and me and from Jason were just chilling. Like, this is crazy. Wow, let's just play through. Let's just keep playing golf while they fight. don't know. I still don't know how that even happened or why I had that dream, but it definitely made me go, "Oh, I can watch these movies. This is fun."
And that sounds like a good movie, actually.
Yeah, it
uh,
was a lot of very interesting dreams.
yeah. And what about your favorite final girl?
Oh, it's Nev. It's
Yeah.
Sydney.
Yeah,
That's
same
always
here.
gonna. I'm a Nev. How are you? I hope life is treating you well. Come to the next Creepy Con. They just had everybody else out. I know Rose McGowan's coming to the next one in the
Oh, that's
fall.
dope. Okay.
Come on down, Nev.
Yeah, and hopefully she gets the pay she deserves so she can be on part 7.
Oh man, please pay Nev. What? Yeah, okay, yeah. Let me shut up. Yeah, pay Nev,
Right?
please. She deserves that money. Wes would make sure she got paid. Pay Nev. We're playing with
Mm-hmm.
her.
Uh, and like you mentioned, as far as like your music, obviously, is highly inspired by horror and stuff like that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
is it just come like naturally, or sometimes you rewatch a movie and you're like, oh, it sparked some sort of creativity? Or how does that play a role, like the movies?
It can be both. There's a lot of references in my music, and sometimes they're too referential and they kind of go over people's heads, or it's pretty much like right in your face. But
Yeah,
so if I'm watching something or I watch something, it might spark me to want to make a song and have references to it. Or it could just be, well, I need a punchline and I'm thinking of a punchline and go, oh, this reminds me of this movie, this very obscure movie that only I like, but I'm gonna make a reference to it. I don't care. So
yeah,
that can happen as well, and that happens with horror a lot, with a lot of the action movies I like, just stuff like that.
yeah. Okay, cool. And where do you see yourself like in the next 5 years, like creatively?
The goal in the next 5 years is just to be touring off of music, you know, doing music full time and just being able to tour off it. I don't need to be some super duper. My tour tickets are being sponsored by Amex. Get your tickets at the preset. I don't need to do all that. I just need to make a living off my music where I can travel around, perform,
Yeah,
steady merch, nothing crazy. As long as I can still go into Target while also paying my bills and just making music, I'm
yeah.
gold. I'm good.
That's dope. And because you say you do like voiceover work and other stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that, like other creative things
Yeah.
that you do. Because I think as creatives, I think we always find different outlets, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
for you, like besides being like an artist, do you see yourself doing something else, like moving in like the movie realm? Like, what do you see yourself there?
I don't know if I would ever act because, contrary to music, my memory is terrible. I don't know if I could ever remember a script, but I would love to like write more stuff like script wise or be able to be in writing rooms and doing stuff like that
Okay.
as much as I could. And then voiceover work is always fun. I feel like that's always entertaining to do. So I would love to kind of, supplement with that as well.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. What kind of work have you done for like voiceover?
Right now it's just been like a lot of commercials and stuff. Like the coolest thing I did was I did there was an ad that they ran in Canada
Mm-hmm.
when Vince Carter was retiring for the NBA, and I voice over that.
Oh wow, that's cool. How did you
Yeah,
get into that? Like in that little field?
it's kind of like the ultimate, know people kind of thing. I did a
Okay.
soundtrack in like 2017. I was a part of a soundtrack for a show called Best Shot that was produced by LeBron James, and it ran on ESPN
Mm,
at one point.
yeah.
And based off of doing that, the people I did that with, they had friends who were doing the commercial stuff, and they were like, "Oh, this guy, he might be wanting to get into voiceover work. Reach out to him." So they hit me up like, "Hey, we're looking to do." I'm like, "It's Vince Carter. Of course, I'll voice over this commercial."
Yeah.
And I never even got to see it on TV. They played it on TV a few times, and I didn't get to see it.
Oh shit.
And only reason why the first time I knew that they played it on TV is because everybody started sending me like an Instagram story, and it was Drake's Instagram story of him watching the commercial and filming it.
Oh wow.
I was like, "Oh," I was like, "Well, hey, okay, it's on TV." So that was cool.
That's pretty dope. And what are you like most proud of so far that you've accomplished like creatively?
What am I most proud of that I've accomplished creatively? I'm such a pessimistic person. I'm even thinking about accomplishments. Um, well, I mean, music did get me out of debt, so that's always tight to me. Like that, I've made enough money off of music at points to go. I'm just gonna pay off this debt,
That's
and
dope.
that's music's helped me pay off vehicles, pay off debts. So I can't complain.
Yeah, that's inspiring. Because at one point, we always had the musicians are like the ones that have nothing to fall on. So it's cool that you're
Mm-hmm.
making like income. Because that was like the big thing. Like at least parents, when you tell them, I want to be an artist, and that's what they think, right? Like you're gonna
Mm-hmm.
live in your car or something.
Yeah,
It is tough
yeah.
sometimes, but
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Not saying that it's easy, because for those listening, and talking about that too, like what advice would you give somebody that's like barely maybe starting out and they're kind of catching a buzz or something? Like what advice would you give them to, like that has helped you succeed as an artist?
Create what you feel like creating and then put it out as fast as you can. And the best reason I can say that, or example for me to say that, is when I did, was it 2019, the end of 2019, when I made my homage to Linkin Park's Hybrid Theory album, and I wrote it, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna put all the songs of all the punchlines are gonna be songs from the first album in order. All right, I'm gonna do it over this beat. All right, I'm gonna drop it. And I was sitting there and I was like, started doubting myself, doing what all artists do. Why you drop that? Ain't nobody gonna watch it, blah, 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 blah. And eventually I just said, nah, F that, I'm dropping it. I filmed it, put it out, and the day I put it out, Mike Shinoda sees it. So if I don't drop that, Mike Shinoda doesn't see me doing this. And in turn, eventually Mike Shinoda doesn't remix that song and make his own beat for it and let me put it out. So I can now say, I started writing the way I write because of Linkin Park, and now I have a song that's produced by Mike Shinoda. You don't get there if you don't at least attempt. You got to put the shots up. You got to at least put it out. And you can't let whatever's happening around you dictate the way you want to create your art. Because as soon as you do that, then it's not authentic to who you are.
Yeah, and I like that. That's true, because we talk about that a lot. Like people, like especially creators, like you said, we doubt ourselves a lot, and then you won't know unless you put it out, instead of just like having it there. Because it's better to know and either have a regret than like not knowing what would have happened. You know.
Absolutely.
And then I think I forgot, I skipped this part, but what are some of your top like 5 horror flicks of all time? Obviously Scream is in there, but
no, Scream is my favorite ever. Halloween is probably the most effective to me, as far as like if I'm just being unbiased. Halloween is like ridiculously effective as a horror film. That's so tough. It's like picking between children. I'm gonna go with the first Nightmare on Elm Street, which is just beautifully done, so well done.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with the original Texas Chainsaw. Super freaky movie. I'll just mix it up, not just off the top of my head, just going with something more modern. I'm gonna go with the first Conjuring. Okay. First Conjuring is probably like the, as far as without having to go into like the more graphic stuff that's been coming out lately, or like the new French extremist movement stuff that came out over like the past like 10 years or so.
Yeah.
The Conjuring was probably the most like effective like horror movie, because these foreign folks be wilding, boy. Don't watch a Serbian film, y'all.
Oh God,
don't do it.
I always hear that. Yeah, to this day I still haven't watched this because everybody's like, don't do it.
Don't watch that. Don't watch Martyrs. Don't watch Martyrs. Don't watch these. You don't need to see this. Okay, it's not necessary.
I was like, yes, some genre of like torture and like the rap torture and all that, rape torture and all that stuff. Like, I can't do that.
There was one that just. Do you have Shudder?
No, but I see some of the movies that are on there. Yeah.
There was one that I forgot what it was called last year, about like a family that goes on vacation with another family and then goes and stays at their house for a while with their kid. That movie was trippy. But the ending was like, why are we doing this? Like, why are we doing this?
Yeah, which one was the one that I watched? I was like, damn, this shit. It was on Shudder too. It's a girl. I think is it called Revenge? No, it's like one word movie, and it's kind of like pink like the cover or whatever. But it's a girl, and she, I think, she gets raped. She ends up getting killed, or like they leave her for dead or something, and then she ends up like not being dead. I think the adrenaline like kept her alive or some shit, and then she like takes revenge on all these people. I was like, shit. Like, I love the endings. Like I just don't like the what happens before.
Yeah. It's like a new spit on your grave type of thing.
Yeah.
So those movies are like, why we gotta do this first? Why we gotta go this far?
Yeah, or like a girl with a dragon tattoo. I was like, damn.
Yeah, we gotta go so far before people get what they need to get. Man, come on now. Gotta do all that.
What's like a movie recommendation that you would give to someone that's maybe barely getting introduced to the horror genre? Besides Scream.
Yeah, I mean, because Scream is like the perfect, like,
I know.
You're not going to get too... It's just a great introduction. Like, it's like, here you go. It's not too creepy. You know, it's not too wild. It's like Terrifier too. No.
Oh my God.
I would say, like, I'd say The Ring.
Okay, that's a good
If
one.
the ring is too much for you, you got to start dialing it back. Like, but the ring is like you should be able to deal with the ring to start. Then you can kind of go from there.
Okay, cool. And I was gonna ask you too. Do you have anybody like on your bucket list as far as like collaborations, either with an artist or a producer that you would like to work with, and who would that be?
Producer wise, Alchemist for sure. Since
Oh
Daft
yeah.
Punk want to break up, I'll go with Alchemist. With Alchemist, I did some of my first earliest like hip hop, going to my friend's house on his crappy computer and just recording a bunch of songs. It was always like Alchemist beats. So definitely Alch. Artist wise, there's a lot, but if I could get a record in with Lou, that'd be dope. If I could do a record with Lupe,
Yeah,
that'd be really hard. As far as rappers go, he'd be at the top of the rapper list.
that's cool. And what about any upcoming projects or anything that you're working on currently?
I am working on shoot stuff. I'm working on. I got an EP with Nabi and that we've been working on forever. It's gonna get done. It's called Banner Boys. I've got the Untitled album that I'm working on. I've got a group project with my camp. We're called OE Over Everything. We've got a group album coming soon. I've got
Okay.
like 2 group projects coming with Jay Kasai, one of my constant collaborators who's in my camp. We have a group called the Midnight Run. We got a
Okay.
bunch of stuff coming out. I have a lot. I want to do an EP with Dare House. I just write like more like pop stuff
Okay.
and have him sing it because I can't sing. Yeah, you know. And then whatever Oh Gosh sends me to rap on, just send it to me and I'll rap on it. Oh Gosh, that's kind of the rule.
Yeah, that's pretty dope. Yeah, I see you working out there, and like you're also on other podcasts. So I appreciate
Mm-hmm.
your time. And before we get out of here, I usually like to end it with this question: what kind of legacy would you like to leave behind or be remembered, either creatively or personally?
The legacy I want to leave behind is just somebody who was very open their entire journey into reaching their ultimate goal and destination of being happy with what they do for a living.
Yeah.
So I try not to, especially when it comes to social media, I try to give, well, if I feel like down about what I'm doing, I like to share that too, because I don't
Hmm.
want it to just seem like everything's great. You only see the highlights. You only see the great things. It's
Yes.
not how life works for anybody. So I
Hmm.
don't want anybody to feel like, oh, well, I'm trying to do something like Cam's doing it, even if they are. If they're not, I would understand. But if they are, like, I want you to make music like Cam's doing. All he does is be putting out dope stuff. It's not how this works. It's not how this works at all.
That's
But at
true.
the end of the day, if I can help people be okay with who they are and creating what they want to create, and then being happy with what they do for a living and not just doing it for a paycheck, not just doing 9 to 5 stuff, then I've done my job.
Yeah, that's dope. And any other like any shout outs or anything else you want to plug in before we get out of here?
Just shout out to my team, my camp over everything. Shout out to my producers. Oh gosh, Nabi and my roommates for not being loud right now. I don't want to fight nobody. Yeah, and if everybody who's actually a fan of the music and everything, shout out to y'all, and shout out to Nev Campbell. Every day of my
Yeah.
life.
Yeah,
Shout
shout
out to
out to
you,
her.
Nev. Mm-hmm.
But thank you again, Cam, for being on here. I appreciate you. Keep doing what you're doing. Like I said, it's inspirational. Just to see like you getting better, and every time I see you perform, it's like shit. Like that's crazy. Like to see you like the way you perform, it's like a whole different monster. Because I always talk about that, like rapping on an album versus live performance is 2 different
Mm-hmm.
things. So it's
Yeah,
cool that you've owned that craft, and continue to do it. And yeah, thank you so much for being on.
thanks for having me.
No problem. And thank you everybody for tuning in. I'll share Cam's info in the description so you can go follow him, check out his music. Really dope artist, like I mentioned. And yeah, if you haven't already, subscribed to the YouTube channel here at 7 Octoberz. Thank you guys. Peace.